Good evening. I'm Yumi Park, Director of the Women's and Gender Studies program at Georgetown University. I would like to welcome all of you and thank you for joining us tonight in celebrating these women who blazed the trail in so many different ways. Tonight's event is co-sponsored by the Institute of Politics and Public Service and the Women's and Gender Studies program here at Georgetown University. I especially would like to thank our own inimitable Dana Brazil. This event is Dana's brainchild, and thanks to her vision and hard work, we gathered together tonight. I have to also say special thank you to Moya Laifi, whose generosity and patience made all this possible. And of course, I thank Ms. Leslie Byers, who is the guardian angel of our program. Now, if you allow me, I would like to have a moment to recognize the students and the faculty of the Women's and Gender Studies program. Things have been difficult and unsettling for the last 2 years or so, and they persevered and supported each other in the most inspiring way. So thank you and love you all very much. I believe we have gotten closer and stronger together because of what we went through. As you know, every March we celebrate Women's History Month. Its origin, they say, can be traced back to a meeting among suffragists and socialists in 1909, which is an apt reminder that to us in 2021, economic justice and voting rights still remain the most urgent issues to women. In the United States, it became a month-long celebration of women's achievements in 1987, which is also very special to our program because that is exactly the year our program was created. Now, I would like to recognize the outstanding work of our student scholars by announcing the winners of our annual feminist writing competition. The competition was possible thanks to the longest and most fervent supporter of our program, Professor Diane Apostolos Capadona. Thank you so much, Diane, as always. We received so many incredible papers, and it was almost impossible to select the winners. The breadth and depth of our students' scholarship was truly gratifying and even humbling. So this year's honorable mentions are Madeline Kearney, Cindy Wang, Max Frieden Johnson, and Anna Norman. And the winner of this year's grand prize is Maya Silardi with her entry titled Reimagining Reproductive Justice Behind Bars, Reproductive Abuses in the United States Carceral System and Pathways to Justice. Congratulations to all the winners. Now I would like to introduce Georgetown's own trailblazer, Niall Glass, who will have the honor to introduce our distinguished panelists. Already an accomplished activist and formidable presence in DC politics, Niall is the first Black woman to serve as president of Georgetown's main student body. And I cannot think of a better person to introduce today's panelists. Now, please join me in welcoming Niall Glass. And Niall, you can take it away.
Thank you. I didn't know I was going to get my own little introduction. So yeah, thank you so much, Director Park. And good evening, everyone. My name is Niall Glass, and I'm a junior in the college. I'm majoring in government with a double minor in sociology and African American studies. And as it's already been said, I am recently elected president of Georgetown University Student Association. And that makes me the first Black woman to have ever held this position in Georgetown's 232-year-long history. I'm excited for the work that comes with that role, and just as I'm excited for this event, but I'm even more excited to see the day when there are no more firsts to be had. 2021 is a little late, but we're getting there, and I appreciate all the progress that we see. And especially in considering that progress, it's my honor to introduce tonight's panelists. So we have Representative Sharice Davids, who has represented the 3rd District of Kansas in the House of Representatives since 2019, and is one of the first Native American women and the first LGBT Native American elected to the House of Representatives. We have Governor Suzanne Martinez, who served as the governor of New Mexico from 2011 to 2019, and was the first female governor of New Mexico and first Hispanic female governor in the United States. Senator Carol Moseley Braun served from 1993 to 1999 as a senator from Illinois, becoming the first Black woman to serve as a United States Senator. Delegate Kathy Tran is the first Vietnamese American elected in the Commonwealth of Virginia and one of the first Asian American female members of the House of Delegates, where she has served since 2018. And then Governor Christine Todd Whitman, who is the first woman to be the governor of New Jersey, where she served from 1994 to 2001. And tonight's conversation will be moderated by the lovely Donna Brazil, the first Black woman to manage a major party presidential campaign and an adjunct assistant professor here at Georgetown. Her class is very hard to get into, but I'm hoping, because I'm a senior next year, I'll make the wait list. So fingers crossed on that. Please be sure to join in the conversation by tweeting at GU Politics and hashtag GU Politics Forum. And for those of you watching in the Zoom, you can submit questions by using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Now, without further ado, over to Donna to get our conversation started.
Well, thank you, Madam President, and I look forward to working with you on campus. I know you are going to bring much needed change, and I look forward to having a dialogue with you about ways in which we can improve the campus experience for all our students. Let me just say what a great honor it is to serve as a moderator of this distinguished panel. These are women that I know because they have all dared to make a difference. And choosing these women, we wanted women who not only broke down serious barriers, but women who continue to open doors for other women. We stand on their steely shoulders. So let me start by asking each of you a question. As leaders in our country, you have helped to shape American politics. How did you get started? Who helped you? Who inspired you? Or paved the way for you to run for public office?
You want to pick someone, or do you want us just to?
I'm going to try to start in alphabetical order. Carol Mosley Brown.
Oh, thank you very much, Donna. Let me say that I had not intended to go into politics. I'm a lawyer by training. And when I left the United States Attorney's Office and became a bird watcher, the Chicago Park District started to destroy the habitat of the bobolinks in our park, in our local park. And when our state representative retired, a number of the other bird watchers came to me and said, we think you should run for office. I went, the normal, why me? I'm a girl, I don't know anything about politics. And then there's this pundit who came up and said, don't run, you can't possibly win. The blacks won't vote for you because you're not part of the Chicago machine. The whites won't vote for you because you're black, and nobody's gonna vote for you because you're a woman. It was like, okay, where do I sign up for this job? So I was inspired by a dare. And I got in, I ran for a state legislature and I won, and I haven't looked back since.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Congresswoman, your path.
Well, so I think actually you said who inspired us and who paved the way. And I think I'm on a panel tonight with folks who did just that. And I would say, why I did it and how I ended up getting into it was really, there were no women in the race to take on the 4-term Republican incumbent that was, that held this seat. And he had not been doing a good job representing the district that I felt like my community deserved a lot better. And of course, I started off asking other women if they would get into the race. And then when all of them kept saying no, I realized if I'm asking the question, who's going to do something about the problem of not having any women in the race, can I be part of the solution to that problem? And it turned out the answer was yes. And here I am getting the chance to interact with folks who really have whose work has made it possible for me to have a seat in Congress. So thank you to my fellow panelists and to you, Donna.
Thank you. Governor Martinez.
Well, growing up, I was called by my grandmother La Abogadita, which means the little lawyer. I like to debate and argue and kind of give my point of view and listen to other points of view. But I had 2 amazing teachers in high school, freshmen, got us together, a group of girls, and started to make us think outside the box. My box at the time was I wanted to have a really pretty dress for the spring dance and a date. That was all I was thinking of. But what they made us do is think about, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10? Where do you want to be in 15? Something that no one had ever asked us about. And I enjoyed the politics I was watching on television, especially back then when senators would debate each other on the floor about their ideas. And so hopefully the best would come from that. And I remember saying I wanted to be a mayor. And they asked me, why stop there? And I said, well, I don't have any other people to follow. I don't see any other folks, other women that I say I want to follow that woman in leadership. They said, tell me, why wouldn't you become the first? And why not become a governor? why not break the ceiling all the way to the top? And I said, I've never given it thought. And I, that day, set my sights on running for district attorney, 4 terms. I was elected. I was the first female district attorney in the state of New Mexico. And then I ran for governor and was reelected again and was the first female governor in New Mexico and the first Hispanic female governor in the United States. So 2 very valuable teachers that were so important in my life.
What a great story. Delegate Tran.
Thank you. So I never thought I was going to be in politics either. I was a civil servant at the U.S. Department of Labor for 12 years and then went and worked in national immigration advocacy. But I was pregnant with my 4th child during the 2016 presidential elections and just realized that the direction that the country was going to take was the antithesis of why my family had come to this country as boat refugees from Vietnam in the early 80s. And so after I had my daughter, we named her Elise McCourt. Elise was inspired by Ellis Island. Matt, my husband, had family who passed through Ellis Island in their search for opportunity in America as they were escaping anti-Semitism at the turn of the century. McCourt is Vietnamese for bright bell, and that was inspired by the Liberty Bell. So her name to us means to ring the bells of liberty and champion opportunity for all. And when she was about a month old, I started seeing all these, things on social media saying we needed somebody to run in this district in the House of Delegates in Virginia. And I was like, do I live in that district? And well, why not me? It can't be that hard. It is that hard. Running for office is not easy. But I just kind of jumped with both feet into the deep end and didn't know anything at all about being a candidate, running a campaign and all that it would entail, but had some really good support networks that developed along the way and did it because I'm a mom and this is about my kids and their future.
Thank you so much. Governor Whitman.
Well, I came at it in a very different way from everybody. I was kind of inculcated in it. My parents were very involved in politics in New Jersey and in the nation. They never ran for office, but they cared deeply. And I was the youngest of 4 by 8 years. I was kind of the tag along. So I went with them to things. I was always at the dining room table when they were talking about what was happening in the community, in the state, in the world. And I got fascinated by policy. That's what I wanted to do. And when I went to college, I majored in international government because I'd done so much domestically by that point with my parents. That, with the arrogance of an 18-year-old, I figured there's no one going to teach me anymore that I needed to know on domestic, but I really didn't know international. And so when I graduated, I had a degree in international politics with a minor in history and hadn't a clue what I was going to do next. I was thinking maybe State Department. I got a call from a friend. I had spent the summer between my junior and senior year in an internship with the last Republican senator from the state of New Jersey. And that was back in 1967. That's how long it's been. And what was important with that was not so much that experience, but the house in which I lived was rented by a woman who worked for an incumbent congressman. And so she called me out of the blue. That congressman had just been appointed to head up the Office of Economic Opportunity, as it was called, under Nixon at the time. And she invited me to come down and help him do the transition. His name was Don Rumsfeld. So I worked for him for a while. And then I just had a lot of opportunities, things that I presented to myself. I met the chairman of the Republican National Committee and I said, I've got a really good idea. I think things we ought to do. And he hired me. So at 21, I was running this national, 22, a national program going all across the country, talking to members of to senior citizens, students, and Black Americans, because they, right now in 69, as you will remember, there were riots going on college campuses, race riots in our cities, and the seniors were just coming together. But after I married my husband, we moved to England for 2.5 years. When I came back, I was asked if I would run for the County Board of Freeholders, the commissioners now we call them commissioners, they just changed the name. And from there, I was asked to run for the United States Senate. I won the freeholder thing, I did that. Then the governor of the state asked me if I would become president of the Board of Public Utilities. I knew nothing about regulating utilities except they covered garbage, and I didn't know about garbage. So I said, well, I can learn. And basically, then I ran for the Senate, lost, but came very, very close. The men did not support me at all. In fact, the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee had told me they were going to give me $300,000 toward the end of the campaign. I was running against somebody with $12 million in the bank, and I had less than $1 million. And 10 days before, they pulled the money because they said there were other challengers who would do better. Turns out I came closer than any of the other challengers. All were men, by the way. And so it put me in a position to be able to run for governor. Again, I had a challenge in the primary, which I'd still maintain if I'd been a man, coming that close to defeating an icon, which Bill Bradley, he was the senator at the time, which he was. I wouldn't have had that challenge, but I did, and things worked out.
Thank you. For the students who are in the queue, please submit your question using the Q&A chat box at the end of the page. So please use the Q&A button, and we'll get to your questions in a minute. I want to ask each of you again, when you shattered the glass ceilings or made tiny cracks, what was the impact, and how did you use this achievement to help other women follow through the broken glass? Anyone? I know as governors, you all have.
Sure, I'd be happy to answer if you want to reverse the alphabetical order this time.
Oh, there's no order this time, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was the first woman elected governor. What meant more to me was that I was the first person in New Jersey state history to defeat an incumbent governor in a general election since the Constitution had been rewritten in 1947. I wasn't going to change who I was, so the woman part for me, it just was what it was. And it was challenging because there were lots of people who said, we'll never vote for a woman because she's a woman, and the Democrat registration in the state still, even back then, outflanked the Republicans by quite a bit. But the opportunity that it gave me to appoint the best people, I did. And that turned out to be a lot of women. I appointed the first woman female chief of staff, the first female attorney general, the first female head of the state Supreme Court, chief justice, women to a lot of other positions, and minorities and women to a lot of other positions that they hadn't had before, positions of prominence, so that people could see this is a career for me. I can do this. There's a place for me because I see people who look like me in these positions. But the important thing, they were all immensely qualified. But I will say that every time there was an opening, the first list I got, almost invariably, until people figured out it wasn't going to work, were all white male. And I'd say, go back. This isn't good enough. Cast the net wider. I may choose somebody from the first list, but I want a more choice. And that's the way it worked out. So there are a lot of people, you don't think about being a role model, but that's what you are. And you give opportunity to those who haven't had that opportunity before.
Would anyone else like to comment on how can we help others come through the broken glass that you have shattered?
Well, I certainly hope that, having been the first in New Mexico, and I strongly believe that I happen to be a female and I happen to be of Mexican descent. However, I'm hoping that when I was elected because of the ideas and the policies and the promises that I was making to the people who eventually went to the voter booths and were voting. I wanted to follow through with my promises. I didn't want to say one thing and then do another. It was so important to me to stick to my word. And what was challenging for me certainly was that I had a very senior senator come up to me and that we had to balance a budget that was out of whack, historically out of whack. And I can solve problems. I know how to do those things. And he comes right up to me and he says, darling, don't you worry what you said. Just this is how we're going to do it. We're going to raise taxes. And I know you promised you wouldn't, but you're going to have to so we can balance this budget. I didn't run for 16 months and gave my word to the people of this state saying I would balance it and never raise taxes on the people of New Mexico or small businesses. So for 8 years, I balanced that budget and I never raised taxes. So as a woman, you've got to stand up, show up, and be prepared, because there will be challenges along the way that you never expected. I'm hoping that there are always those kinds that are policy issues that we can overcome by coming together and making sure that we're representing the people that we represent, that not just voted for us, but that actually live in our state or our district or our county, wherever it is that we are elected.
Donna, if I could add something, just because the governor reminded me of a story, and it's along the lines, Governor, of what you faced. I ran on a platform of cutting taxes, and by 30% in 3 years. And after I got elected, I heard all that nattering from the men, and the Republicans controlled the legislature saying, never mind, she promised that, but we know what the real situation is, what's really going to happen. And so what I did is in my inaugural address, it was the year that Bill Clinton had retroactively raised income tax. I didn't tell the legislature, and they were all sitting behind me, the leadership at my platform when I was sworn in. But in my speech, I suddenly announced that if the president can retroactively raise taxes, I can retroactively cut taxes. And right now I'm signing an order for the first tax cut. And obviously the people listening loved it. The guys behind me were not so happy because I totally blindsided them, but I knew if I didn't do that, I wasn't going to get it done, because they were going to throw up all sorts of legislative blocks to it because they just didn't believe in it.
Trailblazers.
And we balance the budget every year.
And you balance the budget. I see Ambassador Braun.
I sued my own party on the 1980 reapportionment and created the first Hispanic district in the entire state of Illinois, and created additional districts in which African Americans select. And so in so doing, that allowed for more women to get elected to the state legislature, certainly. And it didn't put me on the best paper with the party leadership, but at the same time, it was the right thing to do, because they cut up the Hispanic areas in such a bad way that when we got to court, one of my lead counsel said I could not call the district the swastika district because it looked like a swastika the way they had cut the area up. And it's like, they said, that was just too inflammatory. I couldn't use that word. But I sued and I won. The case is Crosby versus State Board of Election. And we were not a Voting Rights Act state, so we had to prove intentional discrimination. And we did. We did that, and we created additional districts. And I'm very proud of that. So.
Thank you so much. Delia Tran, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just wanted to add, I think what I bring to my role is being a woman, but also the intersectionality with being an immigrant and a former refugee, a mom of lots of little kids. And I am pre-COVID, it's a little bit different now, that we're all home together, but pre-COVID, I was the primary caregiver for my kids. And so for any events, I usually had them kind of trucking along with me and sitting in the back, and just help to normalize the fact that our elected officials are also just regular everyday people as well. And I get a lot of that feedback from my constituents now who are like, I see myself in you, and like kind of just dealing with family things and raising kids. But also, while my legislative agenda is focused on a lot of different areas, one of the things that I've prioritized is helping to lift up immigrant voices and make Virginia more welcoming and inclusive. And I think drawing on both my professional experience in that space as well as my personal lived experience as well. And I think that's been a perspective that I've been able to bring to this job.
Congresswoman David, last year we were all excited when our country made history and elected former California Senator Kamala Harris as Vice President of the United States. But I got to ask a question because I was watching C-SPAN as our new Interior Secretary, Deb Haaland, took the oath of office. What has this experience been like as the first Native American woman, not only to serve in Congress, but watching your colleague now serve as Secretary of the Department of Interior?
It's interesting because I think that when the announcement was made that Secretary Haaland was being nominated, I remember, first of all, I called her and asked her if it was true. And she said, I'm not supposed to say anything till 7. And I was like, Deb, it's all over the news. It's all over the news. And she said, yeah, it's true. And then both of us just started bawling. And I thanked her for doing the work that she's doing, because it's a sacrifice to do so much and be a public servant like that. And then also knowing that she is carrying a lot for a lot of people, of course, Indigenous and Native communities, but also a lot of other folks who care about the work that happens over there at Interior. And I remember feeling what I imagine a lot of other Native people felt when Deb and I won, which was this, it was like a collective joy that was built up over generations. And I think that, seeing the advances, these different steps, I feel like expectations about who runs for office and who gets elected and who gets appointed now have been getting reset time and time again. I feel very fortunate to have been part of that in the 2018 cycle, and to watch it continue to happen over and over.
Thank you.
Out for her yet. Please extend to Deb Haaland my congratulations. I think it's so important that she's at that office, because the Interior Department is very important to every American, and having a Native American in charge of it who has experience in terms of what's been going on with the First Peoples is just, it's so important. And I'm just so glad she's able to do that.
I will absolutely share that.
And she's from New Mexico.
Yes.
Oh, that's right, the land of enchantment. So what advice would you all give to young women thinking of a career in politics or public service?
It's an honor to be in public service. I've been in public service before I retired for 32 years. It wasn't about money. I could be a lawyer making a whole lot more money in a firm. I was good at what I did, but in the public arena, I was a prosecutor for 25 years, and I was a voice for little ones. Children that were as young as 17 days who had been killed by their children, by a parent, all the way to their 18th birthday when they had been abused for many, many years. And to be a voice in the courtroom and to bring justice was an amazing honor for me. And of course, becoming governor, I felt that I had ideas and solutions to bring people together. We're so divisive now in the country. We see this a lot. And I'm very good at being able to bring people together, to bring the ideas together, and let's take the best out of all of it. We're not going to get everything we want. We know that, and we go that in knowing that, but we're going to come out with the best possible solutions for those we serve. I gave up having a career that made a lot of money because it was a daily job that didn't feel like one at all. It was amazing to work every waking hour in the 2 jobs that I had for 32 years.
That's amazing. Governor Whitman.
I was just going to say, for young women who are considering it, do it. Understand how important it is to have the diversity of life experience and the way we approach problems and problem solving at the decision-making table. We need the voice of women. We need the voice of minorities. We need the voice of people from different backgrounds, because the problems we face today are so complex that there's no one group that has all the right answers. And just because you may not know everything about a position, don't worry, you'll learn on the job. Know why you want to do it. I mean, you've got to have a reason to do it. You don't just run for office for a title. Believe me, as the governor has said, it's a 24/7 job. Yes. No matter what your position is, you are going to be in demand. People know where you are. It's not always going to be pleasant. You do it because you want to accomplish something, and you've got to know what that is in order to encourage others to follow you. But go for it, because it's important to have your voice at the decision-making table.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
I was just going to add. I was just going to add, don't, you know, as the governor said, don't wait for anybody to ask you, because you might not get asked, right? I wasn't asked to run. Many of us on this call weren't asked to run. And so if you're just even thinking about it a little bit, the answer is yes. And there will be lots of people who will be ready to embrace you and hold you up and give you the support that you need to succeed. But I think it's extremely gratifying to be able to make a huge difference in people's lives, you know, through the policy work, the coalition building work and such. I'm gonna put myself on mute.
Multitasking. Absolutely. We have our first questioner. Susanna, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from and your graduation year. Go ahead, Susanna.
Hi. Yes. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Susanna Blunt. I'm a senior in the college, originally from Jackson, Mississippi, and I'm majoring in government and minoring in Spanish. And my question is, how do you think your life experiences affected the policy areas or issues that you chose to focus on once in office?
Who wants to tackle that, Governor? Oh, okay, Cherise?
Okay.
Congresswoman, go ahead, and we'll get to
So I think, you know, one of the things that I think is so interesting about having a life experience that's it's not necessarily the traditional path, but I do feel like I have an experience that's not that uncommon. It's not uncommon to be raised by a single parent. It's not uncommon to, you know, it took me 4 years to get an associate's degree and 4 years to get a bachelor's degree. I was working the whole time. These are not uncommon experiences, but unfortunately, it's uncommon in the unfortunately it's uncommon to see that in, you know, in Congress and in other decision-making positions. And because of that, I think that the way that my lived experience impacts policy is less around what are the specific policies. There are a couple, you know, tribal issues, mental and behavioral services access, healthcare access, these kinds of things. But a lot of it is in the approach of wanting to make sure that I'm listening to as many people as possible, and that I'm not inadvertently silencing folks when they're trying to express the way that policy impacts them. And then looking around and saying, who's not in the room? Who haven't we talked to yet? Because I think a lot of times what ends up happening is, unfortunately, we've had kind of a default set of experiences creating policy for a really long time. And now we have this opportunity with so many new voices and diverse lived experiences in these decision-making positions that we can look around and say, you know, have we talked to women or people of color or Black women or Native folks? And if we haven't, then it's our job in these positions to make sure that we do.
All right, thank you so much for that great question, Susanna. Morgan, introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and where you are in the college.
Yeah, my name is Morgan and I'm in Denver, Colorado, and I was recently admitted to the McCourt School of Public Policy, so I haven't started yet. We were invited to the conversation. And Representative Davids, I have a question for you. You recently supported the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women's Act, and I just wanted to hear your perspective about what you think can and should be done to support tribal jurisdiction issues. There's a lot of them, but just working at the federal level, I feel like you have a very unique perspective.
Yeah. So that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked specifically about the tribal provisions. I think that this is an area that, first of all, in the last session of Congress, Congresswoman Holland, now secretary, I don't know what I'm just going to say Deb, don't tell her, that, you know, we got the chance to work on, getting a few amendments into the Violence Against Women reauthorization, as well as introducing other pieces of legislation like the Not Invisible Act, which all of these things together have, first of all, we need to have more coordination between jurisdictions when it comes to tribal jurisdictions with the state and the federal. Some of that is just information sharing, and some of it is actually making sure that people who come onto a reservation that we see justice and a prosecution for non-tribal offenders. And then some of it is just making sure that people have the resources they need when something has gone, when there's been a violation of somebody's safety and rights and crimes have been committed. Because I think that making sure that we've got services and support for folks when they've experienced that kind of trauma is really, really important. And those are some of the provisions that we've been working on getting not included previously, and then through other legislation as well.
Thank you. The Violence Against Women Act passed last Wednesday, and I believe it's heading to the Senate, the renewal of the Violence Against Women Act. Alia, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Alia Abdelkader. I'm an incoming Master's of Public Policy student at the McCourt School, so I'll also start this fall. I wanted to share a quick anecdote before my question. I wanted to let Governor Whitman know that my mother is a huge fan of yours, and she spoke about you in her citizenship interview back in 1999 after immigrating from Egypt, when she was asked about a politician whom she admired. She really valued your healthcare policies because I, at the time, was an infant and I had a lot of health problems. So she really looked up to you and your work, and she wanted me to tell you that.
Well, say hi to her for me, please.
I will let her know. Thank you so much.
Small world, small world.
I currently live in Northern Virginia. I forgot to say that before. I don't know. Anyways, my question is, I was wondering if any of you would care to speak on a time when you felt you experienced undue scrutiny in your career as a result of your gender, and how you believe that we as a society can combat that undue scrutiny or unfair scrutiny while still continuing to hold our politicians accountable.
Great question. Senator, go ahead.
I would say that culture leads and politics follows. And so when you think about it, the fact is that the culture has evolved so we should really celebrate how far we've come. Because, 3 centuries ago, they would put a woman who spoke her mind, put a weight on her tongue and parade around the center of the square. And so women's unsolicited opinions were never welcome. And so now we can at least speak our mind. And thanks to women that years ago who fought for suffrage, we have the right to vote now. We didn't have that before 100 years ago. So we are moving in the right direction. We just have to be mindful that change doesn't happen overnight, and that it's up to us to keep the progress in the direction of inclusion of women's voices and women's lived experiences. And that's up to us. And so I think that encouraging young women to do that is the most important thing that we can do, to focus in on the possibilities and not the limitations.
Thank you. Kathy, I saw, go ahead, Governor.
I just wanted to add to that a little bit, saying, what you have to do is figure out I think we've all felt that kind of discrimination to one level or another. But the thing is, it's their problem, not yours. You have to look at it that way, because you have to look at what it is you want to do and what you want to accomplish, and forget about that. You cannot let that hold you back, because you have to believe that's their problem, not your problem. You know what it is you want to do and why you should be there, and that's how you go forward.
I love that. Kathy, I saw you shaking your head. I didn't know if you wanted to add to that.
I'll just add, I had a constituent tell me we were working on a bill together actually for 2 years. And at the end of the session last year, he said, sorry, it's a noise-making toy. He said, Kathy, I didn't vote for you in your primary. You had 4 kids, and I just wasn't sure how you were going to get this job done. And I was like, oh, guess what? I'm pregnant. Right? And so, being a woman, being a mom and all of your backgrounds and things like that doesn't prevent you from getting the job done. And so I know that when I walk in, people are wondering, how is she going to get this job done, right? So I just do my job and I try to do it well. And that's what you do at the end of every single day. And that's what's really amazing about being in public service, the amount of people that you can help in so many different ways, whether it's just connecting them to a state agency, whether it's trying to push for policy change. But at the end of the day, it's trying to be a good listening ear, knowing that you have your constituents' backs and trying to help them out. And I think if you do your job, that type of scrutiny will stay, right? It doesn't go away, but you chip at it each time.
You have discovered, however, that you cannot compete with a baby. I mean, the baby,
Yes.
everybody's attention is on the baby.
Sorry. It's like, you know how it's good white noise to me at this point. Right?
I agree. Totally agree. Well, thank you so much. Madeline, hello there.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for coming to speak to us tonight. My name is Madeline, and I'm actually from New Mexico. So hello, former Governor Martinez. It's really awesome to see you here. So I'm an admitted student to Georgetown, the McCourt School of Public Policy. So I'll be going there in the fall. But I just wanted to ask, I guess a lot of my hesitations going into public service is that I want to serve everyone that I can perfectly, and I'm afraid, so I want to go into education policy and reform, and my fear is that if I decide not to become a teacher ahead of time, that I'm not going to be able to, you know, serve my constituents the best way that I can. And I was just wondering if you had any advice on that, I guess that difficult internal battle that I have, at least.
So Madeline, do you think you need to be a teacher before that you can move into the policymaking arena?
Yeah.
Well, we had that very issue here in New Mexico. I had appointed a cabinet secretary who had worked with many national organizations and with also a former president, and fabulous, wonderful woman, well qualified. And the big issue was that she had not been a teacher. Well, you know, I'm a lawyer, and that doesn't mean that I have necessarily all lawyers practice inside of a courtroom. I have thousands of hours of experience practicing inside of a courtroom, but that doesn't take away from me that I have studied, that I have taken the bar, that I am licensed, and that I can do law in a very specific area. And so we need to be able to say, we're going to bring with us those teachers and those ideas with us, even though my education is in policymaking, because I also need to have the input of those whose boots are on the ground, who are in the classroom, who are experiencing the challenges and of course, all that comes with the positiveness of teaching, being a teacher. So you build a team around you that includes all those pieces, and you can lead beautifully, Madeline. You really can. You don't have to pick or choose or go in a particular order, as long as you show up and you're prepared.
That's great advice. Governor Whitman, I saw your hand.
Yeah, the one thing a piece of advice is, you know, you're never going to satisfy everybody. You cannot let that be the final determinant. What you do is you bring, as the governor said, you bring people around you who understand whatever the individual issue is with which you're dealing at the time. You take the best advice and you do what you think is in the best interest of the greatest number of people, knowing there are always going to be some who are not going to like that decision or who are not going to be helped by it. And you just have to understand that and do what you can to help them. But don't try to be perfect, because there's nobody who's perfect, and there's no perfect solution or answer to every question.
Great answer. Wonderful. Thanks so much, Madeline. Stephanie, thanks for joining us. Unmute yourself. There you go. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I was really excited when I saw this panel announced. My name is Stephanie Zosmer. I'm a graduate student at Georgetown in the McDonough School of Business, although I actually work in the intelligence community, which is a very male-dominated environment. So my question for the panel is, how can we make space for other women, and particularly minority women, in male-dominated spaces where we don't necessarily have administrative power?
Good question. Who wants to tackle that question?
Well, I'll just go in very quickly. I was first elected as district attorney, but before then I was an assistant for 7 years. I had to prove myself. 98% of all law enforcement that I worked with were men. And so here comes a female taking a role, big roles within my office very quickly. because I learned every single day. I had to learn something new. I had to be able to exercise it in the courtroom. I had to make sure that I was bringing justice to whomever was involved in the system itself. And so I had to prove myself. And did that mean sometimes I was working harder than I had to? Yeah. Then the man next to me? Sure. But I was willing to do it because I was going to prove myself. And slowly I moved up in the administrative levels, still stayed in the courtroom because I had to stay connected with what I was doing. Then I ran for district attorney and I got elected. I still had to continue to prove myself to that 98% of men that I could do it, bring them along, show them the changes in the laws, say that we can do this if we're all informed appropriately. So when we do go to court, we're doing the right thing. And so it can be done. And sometimes, yeah, it doesn't feel right. It feels like, why am I working twice as hard? Why am I having to prove myself? Well, you know what? At the end of the day, I'm better for it. And so I wish I didn't have to. But when I was doing this back in the day, I had to, and I was very successful in my career as a prosecutor, and then took those skills and brought them over to being governor, to learning how to negotiate and how to work together with the other side of the aisle, how to make sure that we're compromising and coming up with the best solutions. Those skills can follow you in a variety of careers. You just have to be willing sometimes to give it a little bit more to prove yourself, even though we don't like having to have to do that.
Thank you. Carol, I saw you, were you trying to chime in?
No, right. I associate myself with what the governor just said, but in addition to that, you just have to show up and do your job. That's number one, and it will make space for others, whether you think so or not. When I first showed up to the Senate, one of the guards at the door didn't want to let me in until the guy on the other side of the door said to him, "Oh no, that's the new senator from Illinois." And so I came on through and walked onto the Senate floor. And now I'm proud to say Kamala Harris is now the vice president. So we just make space for others as we go and show up and do our job. And the governor is exactly right. It may mean you have to work twice as hard to be considered half as good. And you may be under a microscope and battered and beat up and whatever, but it's worth it because you really are serving the public interest, and you are helping people, and you're helping people other than yourself. And that, I think, is the noblest thing that anybody can do.
Congresswoman.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, Stephanie, one of the things I would say in addition is I wouldn't underestimate the benefit and power in finding some allies in those different spaces. And you can do that through asking lots of questions, bringing things up, whether it's in meetings or in one-on-one conversations. And asking some of, I'm one of the first 2 Native American women elected to Congress, but it wasn't just Native Americans who voted for me and came out and knocked on doors. It was lots of people. And it wasn't just women who came out and knocked on doors. It was lots of people. And I think making sure that, leveraging the conversations that you have with other folks can often help you find people who are willing to be the other person in the meeting who will ask the question. How come there's, how many applicants did we look at? We heard a little bit about that earlier too, but I wouldn't underestimate the power of finding some allies in that space.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that great question. Angela? Is it Angela? I can't tell the difference. Ms. White.
Angel, hi. I'm just so honored to, I'm sorry, I'm having problems with my video. Just so honored to be in front of you guys. You are so awesome. Woo! So here's my, I would just want to first state, there are many cases where women in the workplace are purposely not provided information and resources to achieve even greater outcomes. Sometimes it's a case of being gaslighted by a male-dominated upper management. Sometimes it might be the complicity of biased or prejudiced attitudes by others, especially women in higher positions, and or obvious prejudices sown because of race, beliefs, gender, ethnicity, etc. Question is, what suggestions do you have for women in the workplace who are not provided the resources to succeed, or women who are in atmospheres where many microaggressions shape the views to exclude positive outcomes for those that you're just trying to help? And the part two of that is, what tactics do you use to maneuver around such negative people who act as roadblocks to the success of you and or your endeavors and projects? Thank you so much. I mean, thank you, really.
Right. Thank you. Kathy, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can jump in. First of all, you need to know who your people are, right? You need to have your people outside of work or outside of the space that you're trying to achieve that change in, who will be able to just affirm you for being an amazing person that you are. And that affirmation is not just coming from those interactions. And you just need that in any type of job or industry that we work in, right? So I hope that you have that community. And then the second piece I would say is, and I think that both governors spoke about this, is sometimes we just have to do that extra homework. So I'll give you an example. This year I was negotiating a bill. I was just thinking about all my identifying characteristics about this bill. I was negotiating a bill with some of our top lobbyists in Richmond and some key business stakeholders. I came out of the House. When I headed into the Senate, the chairman was like, what is the business community saying? So I knew kind of where the leverage was, and I did my homework, and I had a call with them, and it was, I'm sorry, I knew who had the leverage. But when I had my call with them, it was like, they were like, well, I don't think you mean that you're concerned about this particular issue, because it's really not a problem, yada, yada, about, this is how data is set up, this is how you can share it, it's all good. And I was like, no, let me tell you about this research I found from, England. And it was mathematical research that wasn't even written with numbers. And I read the whole report, and this is what it said, right? And they stopped, right? Because I did my work. Okay, 1 second, baby, here you go. And I did my work. And I think that when you're able to do that, you can show people that you're somebody who's willing to put in the time, and they can't kind of try to cut corners and get around you and try to pull the wool over your eyes or whatnot. And I think it unfortunately does require some of that extra time to get that, to get in like that. But I think it also hopefully earns a certain level of respect from those quarters that they won't try to do it again.
Great. Governor Whitman.
I was just going to add, first of all, I agree completely. I think you will always find there are friends to be found, people who know about an issue and will help you get around the roadblocks. But one of my first assignments when I was a county commissioner, the men, it was all men on the board. Most of the positions I've had have been with all men. They were all men on the board, and they were trying to site a courthouse, build a courthouse. And they hired architects, but it was going to be problematic to find a site. It was going to be a pain in the neck. So they gave it to me as the new person on the block, new kid on the block. And I went through the whole process of siting, and we got that done by being very open, bringing the public in as to how we were looking at sites, why I picked a certain place. But the key thing was that my first meeting with the building trades representatives, I walked into the room and you could see these guys all look at me and say, what is this 20-something woman going to tell us? Maybe I was 30, 30-something woman going to tell us about building. And I looked them right in the eye and said, look, I know nothing about construction, but I do know what this courthouse needs. I know what we have to have. I know what this courthouse needs, but you're the guys who know construction. And oh, by the way, I signed the checks, which I didn't really, but I did have to sign off on that. And by showing them that respect and saying, you know how to build, I know what we need, we were able to work together and brought that courthouse in on time and under budget, which really surprised the gentleman who had given me the job. I think they were expecting a different outcome. I don't know whether they were hoping for it or not, but they certainly were expecting a different outcome. But again, it was showing, when you get into any situation, find the people who know more about it than you do. There will always be somebody there who knows more about it than you do, and listen to them. Say, what are the biggest issues? What are the biggest challenges here? What do I need to know? And it'll A, educate you, and B, also show them respect, which means that they're going to be much more amenable to helping you out.
So thank you so much. As the moderator, I get the final question, and that is, how can we accelerate the pace of change? I am one of those lucky ones to have been able to work as an intern on Capitol Hill and then later chief of staff, staff committee director. I was there when there were less than 20 women. Today, there are over 140 women. Of course, we don't have enough governors. We got our first female vice president of the United States. Less than 30% of state legislators are women. So my final question is, how do we accelerate the pace of change? And what steps do you think we can take in the immediate future to ensure more women are in the pipeline to run for office or raise their hand to serve in government or other areas of life? And I'll go in the reverse order. So I'm going to start with you, Governor Whitman, and we'll go in the reverse order this time.
Well, we have to keep pushing. We have to keep pushing and reminding people that it makes a positive difference. Everything you see, every statistic, I mean, you look at boards of directors of private companies, when they add women to the board, those companies become more successful. You look at microloans around the world, and where they get paid back is when they're given to women, because they invest in their communities, and they really do make a difference. We have to believe that internally, and as women, we need to stand up and support other women and give them opportunities, and we're not always as good at that as we should be.
Thank you so much. Delegate Tran.
Thank you. So a couple of thoughts. One, and just as we're ending, given the violence in Georgia just last week and the rise in racism and hate crimes against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, I do just want to note we got to call out misogyny and sexism and racism when we see it, and try to help support either those individuals or those communities that are affected. We can only overcome when we come together. I really believe that. And then also support women who want to run for office, get involved in their campaigns, donate to them. We can only have more women at the seat of decision making tables when we elect them there, and then appoint them there and such. So lift them up when you can.
Thank you so much. Governor Martinez.
Well, certainly this is a conversation that I have with people every single day, every opportunity I have. Whether you're sitting at a restaurant and you have friends around you and say, we're talking politics, we're talking what's going on in the world. And you say, why haven't you ever considered running for the school board? School board is so important. I mean, if you really want to get down to what our kids are learning, school board is super important. When I'm getting my nails done, I've got an audience of 2 or 3 women around me because I'm going to be there an hour. And I have those conversations with them. And I start to say, why wouldn't you consider it? I mean, you're smart, you're bright, you're intelligent, you're articulate. Why wouldn't you do this? But we have to make sure that we're encouraging women who can be successful. Because just like everything else, we have people who are good at what they do and people who aren't so good at what they do. We want to make sure that we have role models that we're supporting and that we're talking to about saying, you too can do it. If a little girl from a border town can become a governor of a state and a border, I mean, that means, in America, todo es posible. Everything is possible in America. We just have to start having those conversations wherever we find women who will just sit there and listen for a little while and say, just like those teachers told me, why not go for governor? Why not think bigger? Why not think long-term?
Thank you so much. Congresswoman Davis.
I guess I want to flip it on its head, the direction of the conversation. As we have to think about ways that we're supporting others, but we also need to do a little bit of oftentimes internal work to make sure that we're finding the things that really will help us thrive. And the more you do that, and particularly since we're talking to presumably students, grad students, soon to be students, if you're following the things that you feel are your calling, your true north, whatever way you want to think about that, the stuff that gets you excited, the stuff that gets you like up in the morning, you're jumping out of bed, you want to get to work on this stuff. That's the stuff that if you're focusing on that, that's going to be the way that you can give back to your community in the best way possible. Because when you're doing the work that feels like it's your conviction, it's your passion, and you can thrive in doing that, you're going to be so much better situated. I often ask if the first question or first thing that pops into my head, if I'm making a decision is, oh, I'm supposed to, that supposed to is almost always somebody else's idea. It's somebody else's idea about what you should be doing. And I think that like asking yourself what you can do to thrive and be the healthiest person you can is going to help our entire society, whether that's running for office or doing some other kind of work.
Thank you so much. Finally, my good friend, my leader, Senator Braun, Ambassador Braun.
Well, I would just say that if you believe in what you're doing, and this is going to reiterate what's been said before, but as they say, everything's been said, but not everybody said it. So I'll try to be succinct in saying this. But if you believe in what you're doing and you recognize that it's about public service, it's not about you personally, it's about what you can do for other people, and you pursue that, you'll be fine. And I think and women need to support other women too, which is another whole set of issues. It's not just getting allies, it's not just getting the men to straighten up and fly right, but it's also getting our allies and getting other women to support what it is we're doing and to support enlarging the pool. I think that women bring so much to the table, and the more that we convince, again, back to culture, the more that we convince this general society that we have something to add, we have something to give, we can make things better, the more that the atmosphere will change, the more attitudes will change in the direction of opening up to women's voices. And I think that's all of our mission.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all of our panelists for this very important conversation and discussion during Women's History Month. I also want to thank the Institute of Politics at Georgetown University, the Women and Gender Studies Department, Jeff and Kyle and Carly for all of your amazing work. And I know on behalf of Moality, my friend and my colleague, we're so grateful. I just want to leave you all with the advice that I give to my students. And I tell them every semester, why you? Because there's no one better. Why now? Because tomorrow is not soon enough. So let's go out there and create the change that we wish to see. Again, thank you to my distinguished panelists. Thank you for all of the trailblazing work you have done. And I know I'll get a chance to see all of you in the near future. God bless you all. And remember, when it's your turn to get vaccinated, please get vaccinated. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you.